What a fantastic day. Not a cloud in the sky again. And the ice here, this is on the river estuary that leads out to the sea. It's all melting up. Anyway, not here to talk about that. This topic that I posted here is organised religion, the work of the devil. Now, about 35 years ago, I found myself on top of a rooftop in the old city of Jerusalem by Damascus Gate. And I was there not to nick anything or anything. It was actually the cheapest place to stay in a youth hostel, sleeping on this roof. And I've told this story before, but just like very quickly again, this guy kind of approached me and started talking, and this is the phrase that he used to me, that all organised religion is the work of the devil. In other words, the major religions of the world have become corrupted by the devil. He acknowledged that the devil exists, and his role is to drag people away from the truth, which is Jesus Christ and the love of God. So what evidence exists to back up this assertion that organised religion is the work of the devil? Well, if you look at the Catholic Church, I'll post up this image in a second so you can make up your own mind, but the Pope in Vatican City in Rome had a new assembly hall built for him, and if you look at this image, it looks like the head of that thing. I'm not going to say the name of it because it could get flagged up by YouTube's algorithm, but that kind of reptile that's described in the book of Genesis, you know, the one that gets Eve to eat the apple that slithers along on its belly, you know, looks like exactly like the head of this snake. Now my feeling is like, why would the head of the Catholic Church get a new assembly hall designed in Rome that looks like the head of an snake? It just doesn't make any sense, does it? Then you can also look at what else the Catholic Church has done in the past. You know, with obviously this paedophilia. If you think about it, it's not just a Catholic Church. If you look at the Church of England, the Church of England has behaved as though it's an organisation that's run on behalf of advancing the interests of its employees. It's like a pretty ruthless employee cooperative, isn't it? You know, these management structures headed up by Justin Welby, ex-banker, millions of pounds in assets. What do they actually do for the poor? You know, if you think about ex-army people on the streets, what are they actually doing? So how has Christianity been corrupted? Well, I guess the main one is through the organisational structure and the recruitment into that structure. You know, so if you think again and say about the Church of England, the first thing you needed to do to corrupt it was to get hold of the people that are responsible for recruiting chaplains, vicars, etc. And then you kind of tweak their education to push the kind of values that you want to promote. And another thing as well is the sort of stupid clothes that they sort of wear, and you know, the way that some of these massive churches are decked out, you know, especially the Catholic Church. I never really saw any evidence that Jesus was into bling in the Bible. You know, he didn't really seem to be into that type of status symbols, and so again, you know, for me, this makes me sceptical about these big kind of organised religions. For the last 30 years or so, I was a teacher, And in, well, let's think about this. A couple of the schools that I worked in were nominally Church of England schools. So there was every Friday there was a chapel, and then there would be regular services at various points in the year, you know, an Easter service, services for Ash Wednesday, that type of stuff, and obviously carol services and things like that, as well as the weekly chapel sessions. So another thing that I kind of spotted was what was being taught there didn't really correspond at all with the Bible. So there was loads of, by the end it was mad, you know, there was like meditation, people listening to classical music, Jesus loves absolutely everybody, which is true, I guess, but there's kind of no comebacks at all if you're a non-believer. There's no such thing as hell. The devil doesn't exist. None of that was ever mentioned, which I found odd. It's not really Christian, because if you do read the Bible, Jesus is very clear on this. He repeatedly talks about the devil. He also repeatedly talks about the prospect of going to hell if you live the wrong type of life. I think it was George Orwell who said that the Church of England resembled the Conservative Party at prayer. And I lived in quite a prosperous part of Surrey for a while, and again, this was to do with school functions, but occasionally we go along to the local parish church and the big church in Guildford, and I sort of saw this, you know, it seemed like Christianity seemed like an aspirational brand like BMW or something, and people had to be poor people, I don't think were very welcome there, you know, at these churches. It just, people would, it'd be almost like walking into some sort of expensive members club, and people would turn their heads and be, oh, what's that, that's that oik, that pleb doing here, you know, he doesn't belong in here, rah rah. Now, again, this is just not Christian. And then, as you know, there's the other thing, which is the kind of woke takeover of Christianity. Christianity in Britain, the Church of England, has been fully taken over by the woke ideology. And I'm going to do a video about this. I think we could rather than having Moses' 10 commandments, we could have the 10 commandments of woke, which are kind of promoted by, I don't know, the BBC and the government, but also the Church of England too. And I think that these woke 10 commandments, they're an inversion of what Moses, what God had in mind, what was dictated to Moses by God. And this is, again, a lot of people don't understand this because it's not taught to them. Is that Satan works as a complete inverse to God, that God, you know, his boss. Satan seeks to kind of emulate God, but he tries to do it in reverse. So I'll do a video about that. I think that could be quite an interesting one. So why has the Church of England and the Catholic Church and many other organisations, why have they been corrupted? I think the simple answer is that the devil exists, and what he wants is for you to follow him rather than to follow God. So the goal is to corrupt Christianity so that organised religion, organised Christianity actually becomes worshipping Satan, worshipping the exact opposite of the things that God wants us to do. Rather than following his laws, we follow what Satan wants. Now, what I think is that many people kind of understand this. They're turned off from Christianity because they're turned off from, well, it's not really Christianity, it's Satanism, pure evil. So it's not a surprise that numbers of people wanting to go to regular churches that push satanic crap has dropped off, because people in their own hearts know that this is wrong, what they're being taught. Yeah, and I certainly saw that at school. There was just kids that they just completely switched off from chapel and church services, and they became atheists or agnostics, and they had, I don't know, they sort of struggled a little bit, if I'm being honest with you. But they were definitely turned off from what was being passed off as Christianity, because it just didn't appeal to them at all, because the main messages of Christianity weren't being communicated. So we've now got a problem. There's huge problems in society stemming from the collapse of Judeo-Christian values. If you just take one, honesty. For me as an economist, free market capitalism only works if people exercise a degree of morality towards the other people in the transaction. If that trust drops off, then you're not going to enter into an exchange with somebody that you don't trust, because you're worried that they'll rip you off. And this destroys transactions, it just destroys jobs, it destroys wealth creation. And it's not nice to live in a society where there's a lack of honesty and trust. I must admit, this is one of the things that I'm really liking about living in Finland, in that the decline here is less pronounced, and it's an absolute pleasure to live here. And what we're seeing now is God's laws, and I guess you could summarise those as being the Ten Commandments plus the things that Jesus said on the Sermon of the Mount. These are the kind of, I don't know, if you read these things, it strikes a chord with if you read them, it just strikes a chord. In your own heart, it feels right. Now, these values, a way of living, they've been supplanted, haven't they, by this kind of toxic, evil, fake religion of woke and these bastardized versions of Christianity that have been completely corrupted. So I guess you'd say what we've got at the moment is a falling away from the values that we're supposed to have. For me, another telltale sign that the organised religion has been corrupted was what happened during COVID-19, that churches were, some churches were trying to apply Nazi passports. Other churches were saying you can only come in if you wear the mark of the beast. I don't mean mark, I mean M-A-S-K. No, there's only one letter difference there. Replace the R with the S. Anyway, Jesus wouldn't have done that. Jesus wouldn't have said we need leprosy passports so that lepers are kind of excluded from society. So for me, the behaviour of churches during this kind of so-called pandemic shows that they're the work of the devil, basically. Their behaviour was absolutely disgusting and exactly the opposite of what Jesus would have done. Did Jesus practice social distancing with lepers? Did Jesus recommend that other people should practice social distancing with lepers? Just absolutely disgusting what the churches did during Divic-91. This falling away isn't unusual. It's happened before. Happened in the time of Moses. It's also happened in the times of like the Tower of Babel and the Sodom and Gomorrah, and bad things can happen. God's patience isn't limitless. And at the moment I'm reading the book of Ezekiel, and Ezekiel's a prophet, and basically God communicated with him, and God asked Ezekiel to warn people that and he also said to Ezekiel, you actually have a moral duty to warn other people. Now, when you first read that, especially for me, as somebody who used to teach economics and write about it, you sort of think, oh well, yeah, maybe people should be warned about the coming inflation that's happening, and maybe stock up on some food, and I suppose that's practical advice. There is a hell of a lot of inflation coming, there is a currency collapse coming. And then there's other things, you could warn people about, like, it might be a bad idea to have your God-given genetic instructions screwed up with some messenger Britney Spears. But this passage in Ezekiel, it's not about that at all. What Ezekiel is told by God is that he must communicate to people that they must go back to following God's laws, living a good life. Now, the problem at the moment, I think, in Britain and most other countries, is that people don't even know what these things are, because religion's been bastardized. Like, you know, you could go to thousands of chapel services, thousands of Church of England services, and you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know right and wrong, because it's not being taught anymore. And for me, this is where, you know, it's very easy actually to short circuit all of this corruption, which is just to go back to the Bible yourself and just read it for yourself. So I'll read this section out from the book of Ezekiel. I'll go home to do that. So this is Ezekiel chapter 3, verse 16. And it says here, "After the 7 days had passed, the Lord spoke to me. 'Mortal man,' he said." Yes, we are mortal, aren't we? That stems all the way back from the Garden of Eden. We're all mortal. People should just like really think about that. Where'd you go when you die? There's a good one. Have a think about that, mortal man. I include myself in that. Anyway, it carries on. "I'm making you a watchman for the nation of Israel. You will pass on to them the warnings I give you. If I announce that an evil person is going to die, but you do not warn them to change his way so he can live his life, he will die still a sinner, and I will hold you responsible for his death." So basically, if somebody's like doing all like the woke stuff, going against God's word, just living life wrong, you know, all the stuff that's going on at the moment, endemic lying, cheating, stealing, all this kind of treating people according to stuff that they can't change, like their skin colour, their gender, that's evil. And the wages of evil is death, you know. So if you are doing that wrong stuff, then when you die, you know, it's not going to be looking too good for you. But in Ezekiel here, what God is saying is that we all, even if you're not fully on board with the Britney Spears and the kind of all the other kind of craziness that comes with woke, God will still hold you responsible for keeping quiet. And that's the point, isn't it? There's a lot of people who walk on by on the other side of the road and like pretend not to see what's going on. God is basically saying here in the book of Ezekiel that you actually have a responsibility to speak up and speak the truth. So when somebody asks you how many, can't say the word, but let's spell it out, Genders are there, and you reply with some kind of nonsense, then you know you're going along with things, and that's enough to condemn you. So the book of Ezekiel is basically saying here is that you have a responsibility, not just to behave well yourself, you also have a responsibility not to walk on by on the other side of the road when you can see bad things happening. You have got to speak up, and even more importantly, you've got to speak the truth. When people are giving you this woke crap, and you know, maybe going on about you know, acts of violence against human beings, including human beings that are still inside their mother's stomachs, you know, all this kind of like completely obscene stuff. You have got a moral responsibility to speak up and to warn these people, look, what you're doing here is wrong. There are going to be consequences attached to that, and if you don't speak up, then you too will be judged. That's basically what's being said here, I think. So in conclusion, a few final thoughts. I think the first conclusion number one, is that there's been a falling away. We're not living our lives right anymore. We're leaving, society's being completely corrupted. Let's talk it in those terms. Yeah, society has been completely corrupted, and a lot of that corruption has taken place because a lot of people, even the ones that can see through it, they've kept their mouths shut. So there's no better example of that of evil being done because people have kept their mouth shut than NHS GPs and nurses that they know. I actually heard a story from somebody pretty close to me about a friend of hers, and this person had the Britney Spears, massive health problems, blood clots on the brain and stuff. This is over here in Finland, and when they were seen by the medical people, they said one of the first things, do you think it's because of the Britney Spears? And they were going absolutely crazy at her when she even just mentioned that as a possibility that they might investigate. So, look, the bottom line here is that there's been a falling away. Society's corrupt. So the people that are doing the corrupting, obviously, they've got big problems. But I think also the people are complicit in evil by keeping their mouths shut, for an easy life, because they don't want to offend people. Sorry, that's not good enough. God requires you to speak up and tell the truth. So that's the first thing. Second thing is that Satan, has corrupted organised religion, including Christianity. So I think there's a lot of people, maybe they've not even got to this point in the video, they've sort of switched it off because they've heard Christianity. And, that's kind of triggered them, and they've just switched it off. I don't do religion, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, the thing to remember here is that it would be like the Christianity that they've encountered isn't real Christianity. This is kind of like Justin Welby version that, of course, is meaningless, I'm not a fan of Justin Welby Christianity, or, Pope Christianity, in his reptile auditorium, me neither. So, that's that. It's almost like, I thought of an analogy here. I think it's quite a good one. It's almost like feeding a kid sprouts and then telling the kid that these sprouts are strawberries. And then they go to somebody else's house and they say, would you like some strawberries? And they go, no, I don't like strawberries. And it's not a surprise, because what they associate strawberries with sprouts. They think, and that's what's happened. People have been turned away from Christianity because it is being taken over and corrupted. And it's like that Ron Seal advert, except it's an inversion of it. It isn't what it says on the tin. The kind of Christianity that's pushed by the Church of England and the Catholic Church, it's got nothing to do with genuine Christianity as through the Bible, So that's the other thing that I was going to say. The other things, the fourth thing is that God's patience isn't infinite. If we keep on screwing up and we start acting like gods by passing these laws, pushing all of this woke crap, God won't stand for that. He won't just let us keep on moving away from the truth and the light, and there will be a pushback, and I think that we're observing this pushback now. And it's, as I said before, it's the second Thessalonians passage rather, about God sending a powerful delusion. And for me, it does look that way. The people that took the Britney Spears, that got conned into it, I've yet to meet a good person who's in that category, really. And that's all that I want to say, really, is that we've got to speak up and try to spread the word of God. And what I would urge you all to do is, if you're agnostic, think about why you dislike Christianity. Don't base Christianity on your view on it on what other people have said. Go to the original source document and read it for yourself. And that's what happened to me 5 years ago. That's what brought me close to God and to be a born again Christian, was that I just read the Bible as an intellectual exercise. I thought to myself, one Easter time, I was coming over to Finland, and I thought, what am I going to read? And I just thought to myself, well, I've never read the Bible. Let's see what's in it. Let's find out for myself rather than relying on these second-hand sources. So with that, it's another bright sunny day. I'm just going to go off to the swimming pool. And yeah, God bless to you all.